In this video, we're going to continue discussing supply. Particularly, we're going to be talking about shifting supply. So in the last video, we looked at just supply in general, and at the end of that, we talked a little bit about what shifting supply looks like graphically. Just so we have that fresh on our mind, let's remember that if we are increasing supply, we're going to shift that curve to the right. Right? And of course, the opposite is also true, right? If we are decreasing supply, then we are going to shift our curve to the left. Right, there is an important distinction I want us to make before we look at the shifters of supply. And to be honest, when we get to those, we're not going to go into them in detail. I'm going to save that for a different video, but I just want to introduce them in this one. But what I really want us to focus on is the difference between changes in supply versus changes in quantity supplied. Right? They are very different things, although they sound, especially if this is the first economics class you've taken or the first serious one you've taken, then those can sound very similar, but they are different, they are distinct, and we need to make that distinction clear. So when we are talking about a change in, let's actually start with a change in quantity supplied. All right, so with kind of our change in quantity supplied, we're kind of starting with this stock supply curve, right? Labeled our axes, labeled our supply curve. We're going to start with, say, P naught. All right, so at a price of P naught, we would have a quantity supplied of Q naught. Not Q naught, Q naught. Probably need to get some more coffee. So we're going to have that Q naught, that's going to be our quantity supplied. I hope you guys can't hear me drinking this. That would be real gross. So if the price increases, right? So kind of this idea of the law of demand, right? As price increases, quantity supplied increases. But we can all just say, all right, let's just say price increases for some reason, right? There are a couple of different reasons why price could increase, but let's just say that that's the only real thing of note, is that the price increases. Nothing else has really changed, right? Well, then with that increase in price, we also have an increase in quantity supplied, right? As we already know. This is a change in quantity supplied. Right, price changed, and so did quantity supplied. And that really is a key feature, is that both price and quantity supplied changed. All right, all we're doing is we are moving along this curve, right? The supply itself did not change. The amount that producers are willing and able to sell on the market did not change, right, at all of those given prices, right? So when we have a change in quantity supplied, we can think of, in the last video when we put that little table up with our prices and our quantity supplied, when we have a change in quantity supplied, we're just moving to a different level of that table. That's essentially all we're doing with a change in quantity supplied, right? We're going from kind of selling 10 units at a price of $1 to selling 30 units at a price of $3, right? If that doesn't make sense, go back, watch the last video, right? But that's all we're doing, right? We're just moving up and down along that kind of that little table that we made, right? When we see a change in supply, right? A change in the price of a good, if that is the only thing that has changed, and in any kind of homework or test, if I tell you the price of the good has changed, assume that that's the only thing that has changed, right? If that's the only thing that's changed, again, we're just moving along the curve, moving up and down through that little table that we made in the last video, so on and so forth, right? We're not actually moving this curve at all. All right, kind of didn't give myself a whole lot of room here, but I guess I could just erase that. I don't think I'll need to though. All right, so things are a little different when we're talking about a change in supply itself. All right, so change in supply, in this case, as we've already shown, we are moving the entire curve, right? So again, to relate it to that little table we made in the last video, right? So instead of just going up and down, you know, the kind of that list, we're taking that list, we're throwing it away, we're making a whole new list, right? That's what a change in supply is, right? So something has changed fundamentally, that means that that table no longer works, right? We're gonna look at some of the reasons why that might happen in just a second, or at least kind of briefly do an overview of those, right? But that is what we are looking at with that, right? So again, a change in supply, we're moving the entire curve, right? We're getting a whole nother set of price and quantity. I don't know. I keep not being able to remember what those are called. They have a name when you've got 2 points that are together. Anyways, we're going to have a whole new set of those, right? They're not going to match up, right? And one of the ways that we could potentially see if our supply has changed, granted not in this class, because in this class I'm not going to give you a whole lot of just numbers. It's going to be more just lines or just questions, kind of multiple choice questions and stuff like that. But we can, if we think about it, all right, one of the things that really separates a change in quantity supplied from a change in supply itself is the fact that with a change in quantity supplied, right, we are changing both price and quantity supplied, right? When supply is changing, right, price could stay the same and give us two different quantity supplies, all right? So again, right, originally the pair that we used to create this original supply curve, right, was P star and Q naught, right? That was the pair, right? Once we changed supply, right, P star and Q naught didn't match up anymore, right? Instead, we got a new pair of P star and Q1. All right, so that is the difference between changes in price, or excuse me, changes in quantity supplied and changes in supply. All right, that's probably not the last you'll hear from me on that subject, but for now we will move on. All right, so the next thing that I want us to look at are supply shifters. All right, so these are the things that are actually going to cause changes in supply. These are the things that are going to cause our supply curve to shift to the left and to the right. I'm just going to quickly write these down, and then we will just briefly discuss them, but we will look at these in different videos. All right. So we have 6 shifters of supply where we only had 5 for demand. But here they are. All right. So we have technological innovation, price of inputs, taxes, and subsidies. I don't know why I'm reading these. You guys know how to read. And I'm about to go through them anyways. All right, so let's just do that. So technological innovation. Again, I'm just going to kind of very briefly talk about these. I'm not even going to write anything else on the board for this video. At least that's not the plan. But we will have videos on these, right? We'll do some more in-depth stuff. Maybe put 2 in a video, or depending on how in-depth I want to go, might put 1 video for just one of these. Anyways, that's enough rambling. All right, so technological innovation. So this, think the assembly line, think the internet, think the wheel, think any of that kind of stuff, pesticides, what have you, right? Technological innovation, anything that makes it more efficient to produce a good, right? So anything that's going to make it so that you require fewer inputs to make a good, freeing up those resources for other things, right? Anything that causes the time it takes to create this good to decrease, right? Again, freeing up that time to spend on other activities, or kind of reinvesting into the same activity, you just can do it more. Anything like that, right? That falls under that technological innovation. Right? When we have technological innovation, supply increases. That just kind of, on a fundamental level, that just makes sense, right? Right? If we are more efficient at making things, we can make more of those things given the same inputs. Right? So technological innovation, that's going to increase supply. The next one, price of inputs. Right? So we talked about how the fundamental thing driving supply, right, and determining our supply is the cost of production. How much does it cost you? And actually, on that note, all of these shifters, or almost all of them, yeah, almost all of them directly relate to the cost of producing the good, right? Technological innovation, if we can make it cheaper to produce the good, if we can lower those costs, we can supply more, right? Price of inputs, same thing. If we can lower the cost, right? If the price of an input goes down, it means that we have more money to spend on other things, whether that's kind of upgrading capital, right? Getting to where we have better machines that can do things more efficiently, hiring more workers, right? Or just buying more inputs so that we can then just make more of the good we're making, right? So if the price of an input goes down, the costs go down, then supply will go up, and of course vice versa. All right, if you're making something and the price of one of your inputs goes up, right, then if well, there's a couple of different ways that could work out, but let's say that you've got a fixed budget that you can only spend so much money on materials, right? If the price of one of those materials goes up, you're going to have to reduce the amount you're making, right? In a kind of a simple example, right? If you're spending all of your money to produce 8 units of this good, and then one of the things that you need to make this good goes up by $5, you're not going to be able to make as many anymore, right? So supply is going to go down. Next, we have taxes and subsidies. So taxes, so whenever a tax is placed on production, on the production of a good, that is going to cause supply to decrease, right? Which again makes sense. A tax is essentially just an extra cost on production. So if you are taxing production, you're adding an extra cost. When you add an extra cost, supply decreases, right? Of course, if we remove any taxes, which that almost never happens, then the costs of production go down, right? And so supply will increase, right? So any kind of yeah. All right, so then subsidies, a similar thing, right? If you subsidize something, it makes it, you're taking some of the cost out, you're kind of paying some of the costs, or the government rather, is paying some of those costs, right? So the costs are lower for the producer, so supply will increase. Expectations, similar to expectations with demand, and I will say this one's kind of the one that's trickiest out of all of them, because we have expectations on both demand and supply shifters list. But as I mentioned in the video for demand, there we're looking at consumer expectations. Here we're looking at supplier or producer expectations. Right? So there are monetary or pecuniary expectations that can change supply, right? If a seller, if a producer expects the price of a good to be greater in the future, right, then they are going to decrease their supply today, right? So essentially, I think I'm going to be able to make more money for this good in the future, so I'm going to stockpile what I have. I'm not going to sell it. I'm just going to kind of store it. And then when we get to that future point where the price is higher, then I will sell my good, right, for that higher price, right? And of course, the opposite is true on that one as well. Number of sellers kind of makes sense. There are more people trying to sell the good. There's more of the good being provided, all right, so on and so forth, right? We'll definitely, well, we might look at that one a little bit more when we go through these individually. That one's kind of self-explanatory, but we will at least kind of talk about it a little bit more than me just being like, meh. But then we have the last one, changes in OC. All right, so OC here is just opportunity costs. Right, so that the value of the best option foregone. In this case, we're going to kind of try to, again, keep it simple. We're going to say kind of you're producing one good, but there's another good that you could also produce, right? And that's your opportunity cost, right? And that is what kind of you're comparing it to. So if your opportunity costs change in that scenario, right? If I'm making more money now doing this versus this, right? But then the opportunity costs change to where we go up here, and I could make more money doing this than doing this, then I might switch over to this other option, this secondary option that was my best option that I was giving up, right? But now that it's more valuable, I might go and do that thing instead. All right, so that's a very, very basic, very simplified version of that without going into too much detail. All right, but as those opportunity costs change, right, some producers are going to switch from the good, the kind of the original good that we're looking at, to the good that has now become more valuable, right, to produce. All right, but those are our shifters of supply. In the next couple of videos, we will be looking at these either one at a time or two at a time, depends on how long these videos get. I'm going to try to keep them shorter than usual, right? Although 20-minute video, that's pretty long. That's where we're at. So anyways, those are our supply shifters. Again, we'll go through those a couple at a time in the next couple of videos. But that is it for this one, and I'll see you in the next video.